What a complete failure to launch that was. Let's do this one more time. Shall we? Yes. Hello and welcome to a very exciting live stream. Last week we did the intros and whatnot and went through 2 years of work in 7 hours, and everyone told me to save some for other times, as if there's any shortage of stuff to talk about. There is not. So I'm going to jump right in, and today I'm going to be talking about some tricky tracking and different techniques you can use to do lots of different types of stuff that either is there's no right or wrong way to do anything, because it all depends on how your stuff is shot. So we're going to go over some stuff that was shot well. We're going to look at something that wasn't shot so well, and talk about the different issues that you could run into when you're trying to track different types of footage, and how much it depends on the effect, and not even needing to track things necessarily the way you think might be quote right, because it's all very situational, as you'll find with most visual effects. So let's start with something I thought that would be cool. Or actually, you know what? Why don't I just show you this thing? I put a preview on Instagram. You can follow me on there at Escape from Post, if you haven't already. But let's not that one. This one. So, what up, Steve? So let's look at something called reverse stabilization, which is something that I talk about a lot, and is only something I really started using maybe 3 years ago. I didn't really have that much experience with it. It's not something that a lot of people teached at the time. I feel like now, over the years, I've seen some more stuff pop up online, but not as much back then. So reverse stabilization is basically the idea of tracking, either in After Effects or in Mocha or what have you, what you want to do the effect on, whether it's if you want to do paint, if you're looking to track in something like a sign, or even more complicated stuff. You can pull off integrating 3D stuff. I'll show you inside of After Effects, doing a reverse stabilize. So basically, the idea is you track the area that you're interested in working in, and then once you have that data inside of After Effects, through a couple different processes you could do, you reverse it so that what you end up with is something stabilized, so that it's a lot easier to work in, rather than creating the data, putting it on a null, and then parenting whatever you're doing to that null, which again is a perfectly fine way to work, and a lot of the time can be preferable to reverse stabilization. If you're doing stuff with a lot of roto, you'll find that it's not the exact same trying to do certain things inside another pre-comp. And you may find you have an easier time working on stuff, just parenting something to a null. So I'll show you this right here. So this thing that I've rendered is just random footage I took at a Barnes & Noble's years ago. And so what I've done here, I'll show you the before. And I thought I'd start with something sort of like small so you could see. But the idea here is I just got rid of these signs and I painted in the new background back there. And for whatever reason, I put footage of a zombie. So let me show you what the reverse stabilized looks like. So this is just the effect layer. And as you can see, there's a corner pin and there's some position, scale, rotation stuff going on here to the entire composition. So let me show you inside. Basically, this is what it looks like. Weird. Let me clear this. I've been working in this all day, so do disk cache. There we go. So what you'll see here is inside this comp, everything is stabilized around this area I tracked, which makes it a lot easier to work with. Because, you know, I'm not having to like I said, parent something, put all the tracking data on a null, and then try and work while everything is moving around. It can get pretty crazy. So with this, I can just sort of look exactly at what I want to do, and everything is moving around it, and that makes it a lot easier to adjust. It does make roto easier a lot of times. Like in Mocha itself, I will do roto on a stabilized footage first before I, trying to do it on something that's moving. So let me show you this. And what I'll usually do is I'll keep the footage in here as a guide layer, so it won't actually render in, the top comp. But it's good to have that underneath so you can keep working on it. So I just did something like this where I did a gradient ramp and I just matched the colors of it around here. And then I saw, like, you can see there's like parallax shifting of these lights here. So, I mean, that's like something you could do one of two ways. One, you could try and recreate them, or you could do what I did and simply duplicate them and sort of line them up like that so that they match the rest of the footage. And it's literally just the stabilized footage playing on top of itself. I've just moved it over so it moves perfectly. And like I said, it added a zombie and then put in these bars. But again, that's a lot easier to do than trying to, do it inside of here while it's moving. And you just get a better look at everything when it's stabilized like that. So like from there, like I could do a bunch of different stuff. So I'll do one real fast just to show you how quickly you can do something like this. So I'll duplicate this and hide this so I don't break any of it. So yeah, I'll do it inside of Mocha, and I'll also show you a way how you can do it completely inside of After Effects using the warp stabilizer, which is it's built in, but it's not like something they advertise super crazy. So let's do something different. Let's do a different area and just see what happens. So say I wanted to replace this sign or change some of the text or something on it. I just create a mask. Maybe bring the corners in more like that. And that's fine. And then sometimes I'll do perspective. An issue you'll come into is in After Effects when you're doing this, because it relies on corner pin. It may stretch it way out of the bounds of what After Effects wants to render, and it'll like throw an error at you. So when you can try it. Mocha is so fast, and this whole process is so fast. You can try anything you want, but definitely if it's like an extreme shift in perspective, I wouldn't do it. It's just gonna throw errors at you. So usually translation, scale, rotation, and shear will be all you need to get by. Oh, you're not seeing the Mocha interface? I have a trick for that. Let's do that. Sorry about that. So here I am in Mocha. I didn't do anything too exciting other than draw this box here. But like I said, perspective, don't really need it. If you're doing something that doesn't, You know, if it's moving around super crazy, if it's shifting perspective a lot, I wouldn't use it for this, for you know, for doing a reverse stabilize, knowing that After Effects will not handle that very well with corner pin. And anytime you guys have questions or whatever, or want me to even just like try something, just let me know. I'll do it like live. We'll do it live. Yes, like Ryan said in the chat, it's a real good way to scrutinize your own work in a stable state, because then you reapply the broad movement if it looked good, stable, you know. Yeah. It's a really good way to like find how your stuff was working. One of the interesting tricks, and I don't think I'll come up with it in this one because there's not a lot of motion blur in this shot, but it can be interesting when you're doing effects on top of footage that has a lot of motion blur. And there is a way, and I'll show you. It's just the tick of a box to have your stuff apply motion blur in After Effects. So track this real quick. And then if you want to see what it looks like stabilized while you're doing this, there's a button right here. If you hover over it, that says Activate Quick Stabilize Mode. So then if you scrub through, you can see it's going pretty locked on pretty well. So I'll do it this way. And as a general tip, I didn't do it here, but you'll find a lot of times it's sort of helpful to track backwards first. But in Mocha, it's especially nice if anything gets a little wonky, that you can sort of track over your own track. Like if it bumps, usually what I'll do is say I'll do something crazy right here. So let me see. Damn, footage is perfect. It'll come up in another shot. I'll show you later. So I'll just let this finish. Let's see if it loses it. There we go. So it got all crazy and wonky there, and that's no good. And even sort of here, I can see as it goes down, it starts to slant a little bit. So I may go before even it like loses it, just so I have as smooth a transition as possible. And just try and find either a different surface that you can track, or usually you can just get away with pulling the points down and then just having less outside of the frame. Go forward a few. Let's see, I'm about to lose it. And then for this one, there's not too much parallax between this and the back right there. So I think I can grab onto that and it should be fine. So let's see. That, and then honestly, I could throw it onto anything here. It's just to get us out of the frame. So that's good. So one of the most important things before you go into After Effects, after you have your track, is that you hit this this surface button right here. It'll expand the planar surface to extend from where maybe you might preview something. Like if I wanted to preview a logo in here, which is cool, you know, for seeing how your track is doing. What you want to do is find where the area that you're working in is in frame most. Especially for something like this, like say this was like illuminated maybe, and I wanted to cast light over here, you'd want to make sure you didn't start here, because your comp is going to get cut off and you won't have the rest of the shot there. So find wherever the area that you want to work in is in frame the most. And also in other cases, if there's a lot of motion blur, it does sometimes help to start on one where, you know, it's all in frame, but also there's less motion blur. So hit this, turn off this logo, but you'll see what it does is it sends the four corners around like that. And you can either like remember which frame you did it here, but it's pretty easy to track once you're inside of After Effects where this is exactly. So we'll go back in here. I'll duplicate my footage, remove Mocha, and I'll apply it. So you go into Create Tracking Data, select the layer, and then hit Invert right here, and that's going to invert the all the data that we just did. And then I'll come down here and I'll do Support Motion Blur Corner Pin, and then select that layer, which I think is actually 5, and do Apply Preset. So you'll see now it's got the the stabilize on it in here, and it looks pretty good. So you could leave it here, but I sort of tend to work in a lot of pre-comps. I just find it a lot easier. You'll run into a lot less issues when you're trying to do crazier stuff. So I'll pre-comp this, and I'll get rid of this, and I'll call it STB. And then move all attributes so everything is in there. And so you'll have the same thing. It's just stabilized, and then you can do this, and you'll see what it looks like. It's not lining up with the background right now, because what we have to do is go back in here to the source layer where you tracked it, and then untick invert. Make sure you have that one selected, and hit apply. And then let me unsolo everything. Oh, this one I also need to hide. This is the original one. So what that's done is apply that data back normally. So now you'll see if I turn this on that it should just look the exact same. And I'll turn off the original file so you can see this is what that comp looks like. Now, something with After Effects that you should know and corner pinning is that you will lose image quality doing a corner pin. So say I had something where like it was dollying in or like zooming out or something. Like you wouldn't want to do it from the point where it's farthest from camera, because when you blow it up, it's gonna be blurry. And so there's a couple workarounds for that. One of them, which I guess I could have done here to show you, but this isn't too big a deal. It stays the same distance from camera, is you can actually just quickly throw your footage into a comp that's 1.5 or 2 times the size, and do the whole process that way. Because then when you scale that back down, it'll retain some of the quality that it otherwise would lose if you just did it natively at like this. Like I'm doing it right now, actually. Oh, thank God. So I'm doing this at 1.5 times the scale of 1920 by 1080. So that once I scale this back down, if there was any like image quality loss, it should do a better job of retaining some of that detail that it otherwise might have lost. So I'll jump in here, and now you can see I have this to work with, which is pretty good. And it looks like it does a little scale jump there at the end, but I'll leave that in here for the sake of time. So yeah, so now I could do stuff like replacing any of this. I could do something where I just, let's do this. I'll pre-comp this so I don't mess with any of the corner pin data. I'll call this STB pre-comp. And so let me try something random. Since I mentioned it, let's do an extract. Other way. Let's see what I can pull out of the green. It's interesting. So we'll see what this looks like if I just do, this is super ghetto. This is not at all how I do this, but it's safe on save some time here. And then what I do is maybe set this to solid composite, make it black, and then maybe apply like deep glow. See what happens. Turn this down. And then let's set this to screen to see what it looks like. It's hideous. Cool. So then if I go back in here, turn on the background layer again. It's cool, not very exciting, but it's cool. Other things I could do are, say you wanted to do something more elaborate like animate, maybe like this. Like if you're doing like a sci-fi thing and you want it to be more like a hologram, you could do something where you replace the background where this text is and then reinsert any text you want. Or if you just needed to paint something out, like you needed to get rid of the Starbucks logo or whatever, it's a lot easier to do now because you can see the environment around the area that you want to work in. So if I just need to get rid of that, there you go. And so, like I said before, usually what I'll do is I'll make this a guide layer, so I'm not rendering this in the other comp, and it'll just be this. And then if you wanted to have motion blur on here, and again, I really wouldn't do it on this one because there's not a lot of motion blur. All you have to do is tick it on because we had exported it with support motion blur. So I'll show you what that looks like here. If I zoom in, turn this off, you'll see it's actually blurring it. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So let me show you something else, something a little bit more elaborate. Now, Boris Effects, who owns both Mocha and Silhouette, just recently released a new plugin for After Effects called Silhouette Paint, which lets you do like the typical paint that you'd find in Silhouette, all inside of After Effects, kind of. It'll work like Mocha or Element or any other third-party thing where it opens another window and you're basically running another program. But it's inside the After Effects workspace and environment, and that's cool. But usually when I have to do a lot of paint type stuff, I will do a reverse stabilization thing. And it's especially useful for when you need to, you need something where you don't have a clean plate. Say for like this shot here. There's no clean plate of him and not here with this background. So what can you really do other than sort of like cut out different parts as he's moving along? Which is exactly what I did. And before this, I tried with content aware fill, which sort of works sometimes. You can get some pretty cool stuff. Just the other day, the last week on the live stream, Kyle and I, we talked afterwards, and I came up with this really incredible way of using the content aware fill tool to take Rey out of the Star Wars trailer for Rise of Skywalker, and then did a difference matte. And it pulled a really good key. It was like it would have taken a lot more time to roto, and this was like a 2-step process you could do in 5 minutes. That was interesting. Might go over that later. But for this, I will show you. This is the clean version that I did, that I built just using the footage that was here and doing a reverse stabilization. And I'll show you this right now. This is a lot of the work that I do on like the superhero shows that I work on. I have to do incredibly fast, and so it's a lot easier just to find the faster way, the more efficient way, than what maybe necessarily might be the right way. But something like this, and I've done it before a lot of times, easily translates to having to try and final the shot. So I'll show you again here. What I basically ended up doing in here was I have the footage stabilized in here, as you can see, a little mighty Thor, which is going to make it a lot easier to try and make a clean plate off of this inside of After Effects, which is something you typically want to do in either Mocha, like natively inside of Mocha, they have a really good painting system in there, or like I mentioned, the new Silhouette plugin that's now in After Effects. But for this is how I've done it like manually. So I know, like looking at this, here's a frame where there's not much motion blur, so this might be really good to get, you know, as much as I can from here. And then I'd like move forward and I'd find spots where again there isn't much motion blur. And then so I just sort of go along and I Frankenstein, and I'll turn the mask on. I'll Frankenstein different parts of the scene, and I'll just like freeze frame as I go along. Now you'll notice that it's not perfect in a lot of the other areas, but I know my effect isn't, you know, the entire frame. It's selectively around this area here. So what I'll usually do is, as I'm going along with just the stabilized footage on there, none of the clean stuff, that all comes after. I'll start like this with just the footage, and then I'll create a layer, and then usually I'll set it to like multiply or something, and then I'll animate this mask around the area that I know I need to cover, just so I can sort of get a sense of where it is. And I know like I want the effect to stop here, so I just didn't bother doing the rest. And then what I'll end up doing at the end is I'll set this to stencil alpha, which essentially cuts out everything around this mask, and it'll just show the area included inside of it, just for my effect. Now, when you're doing like a lot more detailed work, this is not at all how you do paint. you wanna sort of like match seams where there are like natural edges. You'd want to make sure everything lines up like that, and generally replace more than you need, but maintain as much as like the original as you can. But this works for my purposes, knowing I'm going to have a Bifrost effect come down and sort of just cover an area right here like a column. So this is all that it ends up looking like right here. This is my garbage mat here on top, stenciling everything out underneath. Just going back into here, I'm not sure why I pre-comp this twice. Oh, I couldn't. Here's another issue you'll run into. Let me show you this. Sometimes you cannot get the entire frame in your comp, because it'll be moving like this or whatever. And so I had footage for this, something here, but my corner pin comp only it only gets so big. Like this is the frame that I picked to do my comp at right here. So I know there's stuff on the bottom, I know there's stuff on top. And so instead of trying to do some other complicated thing in here to make it work, do like continuous rasterization, all I had to do was take the footage that was stabilized, and then I did a freeze frame on it right here, and I got this piece that I knew was good. And then because of the way After Effects and Mocha is doing it with the position, scale, rotation, all I have to do is parent this to that, and I masked it out. And so now I've got this mask on top that goes underneath the clean, so I can extend it. And I could just keep going on and on with this if I wanted to. So that's sort of like nice to know that your stabilized pre-comp also can work the same way as a null might. You can just parent stuff to that pre-comp that's been corrected. So this is the clean plate here, and so all I did after that was a bunch of layers of fractal noise. Fractal noise is their atoms. It's how all effects are made in After Effects. So let me see. And all I did for like reference, I just referenced the scene from what was it? It's Infinity War, when Thor first shows up to the fight in Wakanda. And I got pretty close. I did the track and the clean plate stuff yesterday, and I did all that in an hour. And then this stuff I did this morning in like 30 minutes. I can work very, very fast. And it's a combination of like fractal noises being animated downwards, and I did a neat trick to sort of get this that rainbow glow that it has by doing a 4-color gradient, and then like putting it in different spots right here. So you'll see I have the source of it, like one's up here, one's up here, one's up here. And then what I'm doing after that is animating the cycle on hue and saturation, so it's shifting it over time. And so you get that like weird rainbow glow, which I thought was really cool. And then just to like sort of sweeten it, I also have some of the Triune Infinity Pack stuff in there. There's a lot of great stuff in there that is super, super useful. A lot of variation. So I think I did the flames because they had a sort of nice velocity out and they sort of slow down. So I did some of that. Obviously flipped it vertically. And I just layered some of that on there so that it had a bit more variation on, especially on the edges, because fractal noise doesn't really have you don't have too much control over the way it bends as much. It's not a particle. So then the other thing I did as this is rendering, sorry my computer is so slow, but hopefully this is helpful to people without without super workstations. Play this out. So you'll see I have them appearing in here, and the way that I did that was pretty easy. All I'm doing is I'm wiping from my my clean plate. I'm just wiping the footage back on top of everything, and then I timed it for like when his foot comes out that it would do that, which I thought was pretty neat. So this is just sort of like, that's what it looks like underneath everything, and then with everything on it. Very easy, very simple. Doesn't need to be complicated. And I left some of like the particles. I added, I think, one more layer on top, just the tail of it when it's going off, just to add a little lingering. So yeah, let me just do like this. So yeah, pretty cool. Especially for how long it took. It was incredibly fast to put this together. So let me show you something now. And if you guys want, I can go over this more or whatever. I know this wasn't like specifically about this effect or anything, but I'm guessing some people might ask about this because it was pretty cool. Let me show you this too, just I guess because I'm here. But this is what that fractal noise layer looks like, and all I did was I animated the offset turbulence. I didn't do the evolution because that'll just sort of evolve it, but it won't give it the illusion of moving in any specific direction. And I just started it from, I think, 0 to like 20,000 over 5 seconds. So here it starts at 0, then set a keyframe over here, and just moved it to 20,000. So it's moving downwards. And then I just layered it on top of itself. This one, it's doing that 4-color gradient thing I did. And then I also added shine. I forgot. I added shine so that it sort of bloomed out to the sort of empty space here, which, again, it's a super subtle thing. Or maybe it's not. But I thought it added to it. So, yeah, that's how I did that. So let me show you. Close some of these. This is something I shot like a test real quick. And trying to shoot stuff by myself for tutorials is interesting in quarantine because, you know, I'm one person. So it's not exactly straightforward. So let me show you a test that I did. Well, you know what? Real glow. I don't know why that keeps happening. So annoying. I think, oh, you know what? It's my After Effects. So let me just restart this real fast. I'm going to show you how I did it for a final shot in Titans without Mocha. I'll show you how to do it with the warp stabilizer, because again, that's something that's built into it that there aren't a bunch of like tutorials. Like I found it on accident. I was trying to do, I forget what, but I found that and I was like, this is sort of interesting. This takes out some of the manual labor involved in doing it through Mocha, which isn't that much, but I think it's helpful to know there's different ways because you'll get different results each time. And this was done in 4K. The tricky thing about this shot you'll see is that the entire camera is on a rig and it's rotating. So I'll show you the final thing here. This is the final thing. Oh, I cleared my cache while my previews are gone. Sorry about that. So yeah, the thing that I had to remove here was there's this giant pad here that's like a few inches off the ground that they slam into. And so doing this involved a number of things. I was actually really surprised I was able to get away with this. Using just the warp stabilizer to get this. Let me see. So I had to like recreate some of the shadows and blend the edges, and I'll show you what the footage is. Let's find the footage layer. Thank goodness it's organized slightly. Here we go. Oops. So let's throw this in here with the LUT so you can see this thing. So this is what production look like. So, you know, this is pretty tricky. Like, their shadows are going over these edges or these areas where, you know, the shadows are totally lost. And so I had to rebuild a lot of that, and just blend it in as much as possible. Something that you'll notice too, and because this is mostly a pretty quick shot in the edit, this has like, I think 5 or 10 frame handles on it. I left the edge in there here because it looked natural enough. Like, this didn't need to be replaced, so I wasn't going to bother, you know, creating anything that may draw your eye to it. So you can see here the before and after. And another big thing here was having to recreate this grain underneath, which you can see we were pressed for time. So if you were to really like scrutinize this, you might be able to tell that this is actually noise that's coming from some of the stuff here. But mostly it works. So let me show you what it looks like doing it inside of the warp stabilizer. And let me show you, this is actually what it looked like. I rendered it out again since I was working in 4K. I did a proxy of sorts, I guess. Just a PNG sequence with this already stabilized. And this is straight out of After Effects. This is what the warp stabilizer had done. And so it's not doing a bad job. It's not perfect, but it's giving me enough to work with. And I don't think I had to do too much with Mocha. I think I may have done it for the bottom. But so inside of Warp Stabilizer, there is actually an option down here. After you've done your stabilize, you just do your stabilize like anything else that you would do. And for this, I just did position, scale, rotation because there's not much perspective motion, but there was later, which I found, but I wasn't waiting on After Effects to catch that. I didn't think it'd do a good enough job with this. So position, scale, rotation. And then what you can do is you can set the objective down here to be reversible stabilization, sorry. And so when you take this, you could take that, and then all I had to do was take this effect and then copy it and then place it on an adjustment layer. And it would, I don't know why they name it this. This is sort of unhelpful. Reversible stabilization and reverse stabilization. But basically reversible stabilization is what you'd select for your source layer for, you know, the bottom. This is how you'd get everything stabilized. And then on another layer, you'd go in here and you'd set it to reverse stabilization. So it'll undo the whole process, but now you can work underneath of here. So if I wanted to, I could add text or something. Now obviously it's going to look wrong if I leave that on here. And I could like put this here, you know, whatever, and then apply that back. And let me just lower this real quick, but it will apply the same type of stabilization to it. And again, you can see it's like it's moving up. That's some perspective stuff that it didn't catch, which again, I thought might be the case. There's like a slight camera move in and then downwards that I had to account for. And I used Mocha and then some corner pinning using RG Red Giant stuff, which is also useful. And you can do reverse stabilizations with power pin, which is sometimes useful. The thing is, it's just you can't do it inside of oh my god, see, I never open my Titans projects because they're weird. Something happened with the drive they were on. But you can do reverse stabilizations with other types of power pin effects outside of Mocha. You just have to copy the data from inside Mocha. You wouldn't do it through the Mocha plugin the same way, where you like select the layer and select, you know, support motion blur. You just copy the data and then paste it manually onto that effect whenever this opens. Boop, 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 boop. It's taking forever. Someone tell me if I should just crash it or not. I vote crash it. We're crashing. Crashing this app. It'll also give you guys another reason to see my background because I know you want to see that. Crash faster. Okay, task manager it is. Where are you? Boop. And then where are you? So let me show you something that I shot. And so the idea with this was I wanted to sort of shoot it correctly, like with doing a reverse stabilize in mind, but also sort of letting it, whatever mistakes may happen, let them happen, because that's just how it is sometimes. So I did my best to sort of shoot this and do the idea that I had one-handed. Oh, it's not this one. It's Mythic Powers. Ugh, annoying. Why is it saying that now? I've been getting this issue this week, and I swear it's because I've updated After Effects. Never update After Effects. Where it, for any plugin, native or third party, it says cannot find entry point. People on Reddit said it was an OpenCL issue, but I updated it and that didn't work, so I don't know. Let's try this one more time before I have to open it in AE 2020. So, and this I have rendered out, so I'll show you the render first. So, yes, I know, I rendered it to see. I was in a rush. So, let me see. So, this is a thing I shot. And I'll tell you now, there are... I can't remember. I won't tell you now. I think there's 4 reverse stabilizations happening here. In one shot, which is interesting. So, that wasn't wildly impressive. I won't argue with you, but I will show you what it looked like before. So, the big trick here was getting this wand to float up to my hand, and the way I accomplished this was, I knew I didn't need the wand to be there, and this was mostly of like a pan and tilt sort of camera motion, so I filmed it without it there. It is not there at all. So that was, I do 2 reverse stabilizations there, one for the beginning where it would be sitting there, and then another one, and then I knew I'd need it there at the end, so what I did filming was I made sure to, at the end of it, pan back so I had reference to see what it would look like there. And I cut that out and then was able to animate it back in there. So the whole time the wand is actually in my hand and I'm just panning it out for these, maybe 40 frames, which I can show you in here. And then the other thing, I didn't have time to keep doing this because some stuff with work. I'm still working from home. So I had to jump off of this a little more than I was hoping. But you may have noticed that the blade for the saber is also gone in the first half. It like magically reappears in the second half, as you can see. That's also reverse stabilized. And I had to recreate the lens flare too, this little artifact that goes over it, right where the blade was. And there's motion blur. This is a better example of how you can do motion blur on here with a reverse stabilize. And another thing I had to do was like recreate this lens flare that's going over it. You can see I did some like really fast stuff to get the wand out of my hand. But like again, in motion, I could spend some more time on it, but I did this in a couple hours. And then for this is literally 2 different takes. It's the main take here with everything on the table, but clearly it never falls apart. And then in another take, what I did was it's like a puzzle that you have to put these 3 pieces together in a very specific way. I spun it with my hand, and as you can see, I don't really have a tripod readily available, so I just spun it with my hand. But there's a lot of like shaking and stuff like that, which isn't great. So the process of doing this, creating these 2 put together, was first I stabilized the, which one of these does not belong? You. I stabilized the shot of the puzzle coming apart so that I would have a pretty good layer to work with. So let me see. I think it's this one. Yeah. So yeah, this is my pre-comp stabilize here. So you'll see working with this is a lot easier than, again, having to try and work with something that maybe has the has all the tracking data on a null and then doing stuff in motion. And you can see a lot more of like the way the footage is moving around. It's shifting perspective. In this case, it's just doing shear, but it gives the illusion of perspective, which is useful. So once I had this, it was just a matter of taking the footage that I had stabilized and then sort of roughly, because again, I did this quickly, but placing that footage inside of here and sort of roto-winging just enough so I had the pieces and their shadows coming apart. Really super quick and dirty. And you can see it was a little, I'd probably need to spend a little more time like tracking it to get it rock solid. But yeah, so this is the puzzle being stabilized, which again, just did this in After Effects. And I think there's some rolling shutter too, which I probably could have, it would have helped if I removed that first. But again, I knew I was going to do some sort of magical thing on top, so I knew all I really needed was the pieces coming apart. And then most of this area, there was going to be an effect. So, you know, if I really wanted to, I could go back. You know, this took a couple hours to do. I could go back and I could actually fine tune a lot of the roto and repaint in the table here. And then to get it to come back together, I'll show you what that what the trail was. But basically what I did was once it's settled enough, because I knew the track wasn't like super rock solid, I froze it at the end of, on the right part of the animation that I wanted. So right here you'll see I've got some mask going, and then once it's done I froze it. And then all I'm doing at the end in this comp is I've duplicated it and I'm playing it back in reverse, which is, you know, super easy trick. It would have looked a lot more impressive, I think, if I was able to film this backed up a bit more. I was shooting this with like a 35mm lens on my X-T3. So yeah, and you'll see like I even left my hand in there, but like that's sort of cool. It's funky. It's whatever. And to sort of give the illusion that the track was better than it actually was, I actually put the key back in there by itself. Or when I say key, I mean like the stand, because it was sort of like shaking around, you know, due to the footage being moved around. So I actually put that back in there by itself just to give the illusion of like a better track than I actually had. and it comes back together on top of it. So then after that, on here, all I did was I did use a null, and again using some of Trium's Infinity Pack stuff. I think I just did one layer with Deep Glow, and then I have that parented onto the top here. And it looked pretty good, I thought. And then I did like some distortion on the other side of this, some prism displacement using that same energy layer, which I reversed. So the actual effect has the energy, but then the reversal doesn't have it. It's just using like this as displacement, but in reverse. The trail was actually just a saber that I put in, and it was sort of interesting to sort of do this on the footage, because all I had to really do, I'll duplicate this and show you, turn all that off, turn that off. So all this is a solid that I made slightly bigger than the comp just in case, and then I positioned it right where I needed it. But all I had to do was to get it to sort of follow the motion. This is sort of a neat trick you can do in After Effects. As the wand was going around, all I did on this layer, like I knew I was going to use Saber, was I started to create a mask, but I would go through frame by frame and sort of find where I wanted it. So I don't think I started there, so let me delete that. But I started right where I wanted the motion to begin. And so I do like this, go forward a few frames, add a thing, go forward a few frames, try not to lose it, you know, something like that. Go forward until I saw it again. It shows back up at the bottom. So then I just did something super big. I think if you hold, yeah, if you hold Alt, you can do this. And I just sort of created the in-between here of what it, maybe its path was. And then went forward a few frames. So like you can literally keep creating this mask going forward through the shot, because it's tied to the track on that null. So I could just keep drawing the position on like that. And I ended up with something like this. And I think I cheated a bit of it just to keep it a little more round. I did like a quick mask thing that sort of added some around here, but it was a little more faint. And then I just animated in Saber the start and end offset, so that would be thicker and trail off. And then once it got here, I had some keyframes down here, so that over time the start offset is moving down, so the trail comes back to the source and closes. Let me show you with the rest off, like that. And then I added a blur because this area that the effect is supposed to be in here, and I animated it as it went over time. Again, this is a pretty big cheat, but this area is out of focus, so, you know, thought the effect itself should probably be out of focus. So yeah, let me just undo all this, go back over here, delete the second trail. Yeah, Saber's not bad. Saber can do some pretty cool stuff. So yeah, let me go back in here. And again, for this thing, I'll show you the comp for this. I just kept doing reverse stabilizations and adding new pre-comps on this one shot. So this is what this one looked like. So yeah, knowing what I was going to do, I knew it'd be a lot easier to simply stick this wand back in there than it would be to try and paint it out. So this is what it looks like without anything on there. And so this is sort of interesting. When I watched this, I could see that there was some slight perspective shifting here. You can see with these griffins here, they sort of move back and forth. You know, if I like drag through, you can see them moving back and forth. Whereas my track, which is on the table around it, is sort of, it's rock solid. Like there's motion blur, but I can tell looking through that, that it's locked on really well. So I sort of put like a very, very slight animation on the position to sort of match the rocking as I saw it moving, so that it's sort of, you know, it's really not perceptible. You really don't notice it, but I sort of tried to move the wand with it. Yeah, and then again, I don't think I did it in this one, actually. That's funny. I think I forgot to. But you would recreate the lens flare on top of this. Like that. And you could even, like, I think... Yeah, why not? I'll try it real quick. You could even just, let's say, duplicate this. Turn off the guide layer, pre-comp it so I don't mess with the settings. And I bet you I could maybe track the lens flare. Yeah, I bet you I can track this lens flare, you guys. I think I'd lose it if I go into the area of green, so I won't. But let's see if 90 should be good. I don't think I need shear. Let's see. You'll find in Mocha a lot of times, for whatever reason, I'm not quite sure, if you know, please tell. If you have something way out here, it'll track funky. So I'll usually leave it closer to the edge if I can. But in general, you know, the idea of Mocha is to not create a bunch of keyframes. So when you can, just like sort of be aware of that type of thing, because then you'll have keyframes where you don't need them. So yeah, let me see how this looks. That's not bad. I tracked the lens flare. Let's see how far I can go. Lost it. So for something like that, where I'm starting to lose it no matter what I do, you can kind of get away with just going with the camera motion. You can just like ease up on how tight your mask is and just let it sort of be influenced by the surroundings. And that really helps. And then once you get back to a frame like this where there's less motion blur, maybe you can go back to keeping it tighter on there. Whatever works. But motion blur is something that will always sort of plague your tracks. Doing a high pass, if I done a high pass on this, it may have pulled the detail out of here, but I'm not too sure how much of it actually would have gotten because of the motion blur. Let's see. I can't believe this is working though. I mean, of course I can. I meant to do this. Look at that. So what would I do now? Oh, that lens flare is gone. That's fine. Let's see if there's a frame where it's more in frame. I think that's mostly good. Let's try this. So what I think I do is maybe create a null. We'll call this flare track. Most impressive. And then create the tracking data, do just transform, and then put it on that null. And it should be right there. And then what I'd probably do is select position so that all the points are selected, which lets you then click it and drag it. And then I'd move it so that the anchor point is here. And then what I could do is, I could do a few things. One, I could maybe I could maybe simply take the footage, delete Mocha off of it, and let's freeze it. And I wonder if I could just extract it. Let's make sure I solo it. And then see how far. It's pretty transparent, so let's just let it do that. Let's let it eat into it a bunch. This might work. Let's try that. And then just do a quick dirty mask around it. And then something I like to use a lot, because it'll sort of respect where the boundaries of your mask within the comp, at least you'll see it's ignoring this, is this this old plugin / script called reposition anchor point, where you can select sort of the area that you'd want it to be. So let's say I want it sort of in the top corner area. If I click that, you'll see it moves the anchor point there. But for accuracy's sake, I'll also just move it here. But that's sort of helpful, like when you're zoomed in and your anchor point's somewhere else. So I will parent this to the track, and then maybe set this to lighten. I don't think I want to do screen, but maybe. And then I can see the thickness is a little bit more than what I got. So maybe do something like that. And I should say, all this footage that I'm working on, I did a degrain, regrain thing on it, which also will help a lot with your tracks. Like that. Now, I don't really need it to be on the entire footage. That's not the purpose. Like, it's already there underneath. I just need it to be on this wand. And so what I might do is I might have to pre-comp the wand, because this is a layer that I'm moving around. So if I just put like a set matte, After Effects isn't going to respect where it is. And also probably pre-comp this flare. So I will do that. Pre-comps, I know you maybe shouldn't spend as much processing power on pre-comps, but whatever. Let's do it. Flare pre-comp. And you'll see I'll have to reset the blending mode. Which is fine, because I don't need it to affect the background, but I do need it to affect this wand. So let me make sure this is all I need. Yeah, that's all I need. I'll pre-comp it because I have that little bit of position animation that I did on it. Oops, you know what? I've got to cut it off. If you pre-comp something, but the length of it goes either beyond or well, in either direction. If it goes beyond it, it will pre-comp that, just like that. And even if you have it selected to the duration of the time span, it'll do that, but it'll move your layer, like you saw what happened, somewhere way off in no man's land. And then, I mean, you could do it from here, where you press like the end bracket key, and you could bring it right back. But also useful is to simply just hit end bracket or alt end bracket here and cut it off there. So now when I do it, it will just be right there. So then on my flare comp here, all I have to do is, I'm using Effects Console here, set matte, and I'll set it to the wand, and that should be everything. It's so faint though. Let me make sure I set it. Yeah, let's try screen. I might even duplicate it. 19%? No, it's probably fine. It's not like I'm doing anything with this afterwards. So yeah, now I've got the little bit of the lens flare in there. And again, all this is happening with the motion blur on. So slow. And also, I have the layers hidden, but with, like I said, the noise removed and then put back on top, which you can see. I don't know if it'll show up in YouTube, but this is the difference between denoised and reapplied. And that doesn't always work for everything. And I'm just now realizing something else. I guess this Saber one is one I should open up. Let me check this one. So again, this is another stabilized precomp on top of the same shot to remove the blade of this lightsaber here. Whenever it renders, turn on motion blur. Whatever will help. I always forget the performance between working when I'm not streaming versus streaming. It always takes a hit, which is fine because I'm like streaming and recording it. So again, this was done incredibly fast. So it's not perfect, but enough is there, and the process of working in a reverse stabilized comp is fast enough so that the more that you might need to do, you're set up. It's not a bad way to start working on something that you intend to do more work on it later. So here you'll see this is what the stabilized footage looks like. And I knew looking at this, and it was totally by accident, but this is sort of why I added this light in this scene, was because I wanted something that was going to mess things up in some way. I didn't know how it would do it. I just knew it would cause different, it caused color variations and, lens flare artifacts, which is cool. So you can see on this area, I didn't have a great track, you can see at the beginning, but I knew, if it's 2 frames, if it's 3 frames, I can do some more manual stuff here to get that to work and not spend a bunch of time trying to make the track work for those where, it'd be a lot easier to throw in some super quick paint in that area. So after those few, it's fine. It's rock solid on there. And so once I had that, I did an interesting trick that I do a lot on Titans, where I'd basically stack repeatedly the wire remove tool. And basically what is happening here is it's blending pixels between 2 points, and I'm doing it in such a way that it's doing it on top of a still. So I'll show you in a second. Let's see. So in here, I'm doing one big one. I'm doing one big wire removal, and this is the this is a different version of it by Red Giant, but you could also do it with the built-in one if you wanted. This one just has a bit more control that I wanted. So I did a big one on here, and you can see it's not perfect, but a lot of the area it's doing some good stuff. So I just wanted to get something in there generally that I could work with, and then worry about like the orange reflection on the table and this lens flare and this part where it's ruining the fabric, and just fix it later. And for that, all I literally did was I took a piece from over here, and then I just wrote it I just drew a box, and I literally just dragged it down, rotated it slightly, to just clean up that little patch. But again, that's not really the idea. You could do a lot more precise paintwork in here because it's all stabilized. But also when you just need to get the job done, you can do something like that. So once I had that, what I'm doing here is I'm using the wire remove tool to get rid of some of this orange lighting that you're getting from the blade, because it has this orange tape on it, stacked on top of itself, and I'm just sort of like putting points over it, doing it again, doing this part right here in the middle. And so like, something like this isn't ideal for something you want to keep a bunch of the original detail. But for this, I knew this isn't even where your eye is really being drawn to so much. Hopefully. I knew I could get away with more of that. And then for this part over here where I can see it's like it's going off, because I could see inside the main comp when it was going over here, I was starting to see some more where my corner pin was cut off. All I had to do was put in some more of the table, and I literally just did a solid color and I put it in there, and that was enough to fix that. Because yeah, like I said, this is as far as the footage was gonna go, so I knew I'd be fine. I could just stick a color and blend it in there. And then I did the same sort of thing I did with the Thor shot, which is do a stencil alpha with a mask, just doing it again on the area that needs to be affected. Because sometimes I can get like crazy and you can start to do other things and worry about areas that don't actually matter, like they shouldn't either be affected, or maybe, you know, it's just more work trying to get different sections to look better. So it's good to keep in mind simply working in the area that matters. So again, you can see I did another extension here with the color and just feathered it out. And then on top of it, I simply did another extract where I took a frame. I'm not even sure which one it should say. Frame 16? This one. So I took a frame where the lens flare was here. And this whole shot had a lot of motion blur, so there wasn't really like, it was slim pickings. But just, I needed something good enough. So I cut it out of here and I just did a mask and feathered it out a bunch. And then I did an extract to sort of get some of the darker values from the table underneath out. And froze the frame. And then using the original footage soloed, I would just take this layer and I would like move it and position it with it so I could see where my mask was without it off, you know, turning off the opacity, and then just sort of animating that element around. Didn't really need to rotate it or anything. Just got away with position. And that's all going on top of the paintwork I did. Let me turn the opacity back on. So that all goes back on top. And even for this thing, like I started it way off here, which I really don't need to do. It should probably only start here. Because again, I know it's going to hand off to the actual thing. So I don't need it to be there the entire time, just where my effect is. And then I pre-comped it again. I think I did a reptile to be safe, but I didn't end up even using it. So I should probably turn that off, huh? But no. And then of course it's doing motion blur on top of it. Now, you can sort of see, if I turn this off, I guess I have to do this, that you may get values in here. Like I said, this isn't ideal for all situations, but you're going to get in your noise layer, if I solo that, you'll still get that noise from where that orange saber was. Which isn't great. And so the way you can handle that is you could do like with the stabilized pre-comp, do that roto, or simply just roto it in Mocha, and do like a hard edge there. I wouldn't like feather the mask out, and then recreate the noise on your paint layer, and then going through the different color channels like red, green, and blue to match the levels, the intensity, and the softness and stuff like that. Because otherwise you will get sort of like this ghosting image you'll see there. Especially if your footage has like strong grain or whatever, or once you go to color correct it, it may bring that out, which is not what you want. So let me go back here. Let me see if I can pull it out and show you. That came out wrong. Oh, did I just do curves on a null? Genius. There we go. Curves. Boop, boop. Yeah, I mean, it's mostly fine. I think I also did this layer. Yeah, on this layer, I did a hue and saturation thing to sort of play with the red and magenta to sort of take that out more without having to do paint that maybe would be a little bit more damaging or, you know, time consuming. And there's like a hard edge here. I could probably actually just whip that up that way and blend it. But that helped get out some of that orange hue you see that's being left over. So we'll go back to this, yeah. Yeah, and then this thing again is just a, it's just that Triune Infinity Pack stuff with a glow on it. And then, like I said, using that same element in a different comp, just reversed as distortion to pull it back together. And when it comes back together right here, like as it's going, what's basically happening is it's wiping away that that entire take. So that's basically like a handoff to the normal plate. So once I get here, like there's no more effects or anything. This is just the footage. Because again, like I could have done something, if I wanted to, I could spend time on it and try and let it sit more on this ball and it like coming back together if I wasn't trying to film this one-handed. But yeah, whatever it takes. So let me see. I think I had one other. It was in the other comp. Let's open this one. And something I wanted to do once I started doing this, I was like, oh, After Effects, major. Something I wanted to do was add lightning to it, or I know he has like a symbol show up on Mjolnir sometimes. I'm gonna try and spell Mjolnir on Google. I don't think I did that right. Oh, I was so close. 1L, 1J. Reverse stabilizations. Yep. Let's see. It had like some sort of symbol on it. Anyone know what that was called? I guess they really didn't do it after the first Thor film. I'll put whatever I want on there. Let's do this. There we go. Okay. So I'll do another quick thing here with this one. Or should I do it on this one? I also brought in some other shots. This one was an interesting one. Maybe the hand, only because it'd be kind of difficult, but I think I could do it fast. Yeah, let's do it. This is footage of my brother from I don't know how long ago. I would shoot footage to practice like different effects on all the time. This one was supposed to be like a turn off the sound there. The idea for this was, I think this was shot right after like Man of Steel had come out. I wanted to do like maybe a simulation of like, you know, rocks coming up and sort of like bouncing around, levitating as he sort of lifts his hand before he does like a super jump. But now I'm thinking let's see how fast I can do something. So I'm going to set up a shot super fast. I'm going to call this, I'll pretend it's a Titan shot. I call it Tita, let's say it's C1. The second shot. version 1. So what I would do is I'd throw it in pre-comps, create a folder, copy that, drop that in there, go here, pre-comp this, rename, add WC for work comp because I always like to work inside of something separate than the render comp. Go in here, scroll down so it goes to my preset, pre-comp this, go in here, copy the name again, control that, let's put in FTG, do that, then I'd switch to my layout. Where's K-bar? There we go. And then I would hit my degrain, regrain. Go in here. Noise remove has been applied in here. Open this. Auto profile. I could probably do it manually and should. But I don't know if it matters. I'll make it a little bigger. Pretty good. Play this just so it's cached. Cool, turn off all the sound. Cache it now without the noise on it. Let's track this. So, I would duplicate the footage, go in here and apply Mocha. Save it real quick. The host is not set to full. Oh, I'm almost never not at full. Okay. Make sure you track it in full because Mocha will respect the preview resolution that you are in After Effects. And then so let's see, what are some of the weird stuff that might go on? This hand does stretch, which changes the lighting and stuff. But I think the basic shape around this area might be enough. Leave this low at 30 and I'll preview it stabilized. Let's see how it does. And I'm doing this, I can see there's some like rolling shutter stuff happening. Which is definitely something you'd want to correct for first. But doing a reverse stabilization on something like this is sort of interesting. I wish I had like a better footage to show it, but you can pull off some interesting stuff that maybe would look more like an object track. In some cases, like I've done stuff where you maybe normally use the 3D camera tracker in After Effects to track a scene and put something in from, say, Element, where if it was sort of dollying around an area, I could track the ground and put an object from Element in that pre-comp that's stabilized and like manually rotate the object to match. Which, you know, again, it's not going to work in all cases, but that's not really the idea. The idea is that is something that, you know, you can try and do in the cases, you know, like looking at footage. Oh yeah, I could probably pull this off, and not waste a bunch of time doing it what may or may not be the more correct way for the same exact look. Especially since, you know, if you're just an After Effects user, you don't really have a lot of options for doing something that might require object tracking. So I can see right here it's zooming in and I'm about to lose it. So let me play the footage. And I think what I could do here is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another matte here, and I'm going to do it in the general area of his arm. And this is some really weird stuff, but when it works, it works. Something like that. And you'll see I'm going outside of it, but you'll understand why in a second. And then I will unlink the track from itself and let it just keep tracking. And I'll sort of go frame by frame. Let me see. And what this is basically doing, when you unlink the track from itself in Mocha, that basically means this mask is not going to be affected by the tracking data that it's gathering. So it's just using this basically as search regions. It's just going to track whatever's in these masks at that point on each frame, which is super useful for when you're doing like maybe like a long pan or something, or especially on like out of focus backgrounds. It does a pretty good job tracking that stuff if you unlink it from track and just let it slide, let the footage slide underneath your mask or whatever. But yeah, it's always worth giving a shot. I'll see what happens if I just do it linked. See what happens. Stabilize it again. I can see it's probably about to start distorting oddly here, so I'll bump that up to his hand. And then if you go into this icon right here, point insertion tool, you can add more points. Maybe drag this up, give that more of a curve. And then this is going out, so I don't really need this to do anything. So just to be safe, I'll select all the points and go to point deactivate. So those points will still exist in, you know, on the whole thing, but it's not going to be influenced by that or anything. And then keep going up, keep going up. It's doing a pretty good job. I see it gets a little shaky. So what I might do, because it looks like the shirt should give us the same thing, is right around here. I'll just move the whole thing. Come on, give me the rotate icon. Odd. I don't know why it's not letting me. There we go. Like that. Let's do that real quick. Blip, 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 blip. And again, I see the mask doing some squash and stretch stuff that I'm not really here for. So let me go back here and then sort of move it closer to the frame again. Maybe throw that out, bring just these two up. That's fine. I don't know why I'm going that far, actually. I just need the skin at all times. So this is what the stabilizer looks like. Those points seem to stay on him pretty good. And this may have been another good candidate for doing like a high pass, but I can get away with it. And then let's say, let's find the ground seems to be in there most there. Do that real quick. So I did this again. So the surface area goes to the edges of the frame. And then let me apply it to the footage here. Insert, create. Boom, like that. So now I've got that stabilized. Looks even better than it did in Mocha. So that's good. Let's do that. And then pre-comp this, call it STB. Oh, oops, pressed it again. And then go back in here, hit invert, and apply. And this is definitely a shot that I would say would not work doing like the warp stabilizer. The warp stabilizer reverse stabilize is going to work most well on shots that are it's a camera thing. It's not so much tracking an object like this. Because that's what it's meant for. That's what it's trying to do in its code, is stabilize more of like an environment or something, but it won't give you as good a solid track on something like this. So now I've got that, and it's, you know, it's pretty good. And if I wanted to, I could let me check it. I could do a lot of different stuff on here. You'll notice too that naturally it's not catching all of it. You know, you can see the footage layer starts to move up out of frame. And so you may be wondering, well, how do I work on like the rest of it? You know, it's going off the comp here. And the solution is I have no idea. In the past, what I have done, it doesn't come up too often. If it does, I'll either just put it on a null, you know, put the tracking data on a null in here and just work in here, which is a method. But I'll also combine them. I will combine reverse stabilizations on top of each other for like a single shot, like continuing like this. I just did one actually last week for Doom Patrol, which I cannot show you, but I did like a 3-parter one that I did for, it was like a shot where it scanned the entire, it panned and scanned the entire body of one of the characters, and it needed to look like a POV. I had to do like a scanning effect or whatever. And so I was able to combine 3 of these on top of each other and do effects that way. It's not intuitive at all, and I'm sure there's a better way involving stretching out your comp or adjusting the aspect ratio. I have no idea. You know, I'm saying it out loud and I'm curious. I wonder if I can do something. What happens if... I don't know. I mean, I think I need a lot more, but we'll see. I'll set this to 1080. I wonder... No, I thought so. It's gonna affect the corner pin. I bet you there's a way to do that. There's something you could do where you could extend the comp that way. You just need to fix the position, maybe? Maybe I just need to move the position of this up. Because it really almost looks right. So maybe I just need to move it to the top edge of this. Sometimes After Effects will snap. I guess not today. What's up, Eric? I am on the fly trying to come up with a way to make this work. Not sure it will. Let's see. Let me set this to difference so I can line this up better. And see. Dragging this upwards. No, I don't think this is gonna... Well... I'd be super interested to find out if anyone had any ideas on how that might work, because that is definitely something that I've come across. Oh yeah, the rotation's off, everything's off. Yeah, so that's not going to work necessarily the way I think it is. I guess what you could do... Let's try it. I think I can do it real fast. Let's see. Someone start the timer. We're gonna do this in we're gonna do this in like 5 minutes. So let's try that. Let's just extend everything. Let's make this 2,000. Ooh, no, 20,000. But set the anchor point to the bottom. And then I'll save that just in case I need it. Let's save this, pre-compose it, and I'll call this ext, whatever, extended. I don't know. I'm not thinking about this too hard right now, so let's just see if this works. And it doesn't look like the comp is bigger in here, but that's just because I know that's how Mocha's going to handle the alpha. But the rest of the comp is in here. Oops. What? Usually it lets you continue. Okay, let's do this. Super quick, super dirty. do it like that. Let's see what happens. Stabilize. Nope, broke one rule. See, it's because I know what the track looks like, and I know it was a lot stronger than that, so I won't extend it too far. So let's see. Does anyone think this is not going to work for some reason? I'm curious. Looks a little bouncy right there. Maybe I should just do like I had it, focus on the hand for now, because that seemed to be more solid. I think my theory for this is wrong. I think this isn't going to work. But maybe it will. Maybe this is going to work. But will it work? Yeah. Yeah, Steve maybe is right. I'm thinking there's going to be something about it that it's not going to work exactly like I'm hoping it is. But we'll see. Okay, so this is where we're going to start losing it, and then, so let it go. Maybe there, and then put a keyframe. Sort of make the area where the arm is. Selection, select all in spline, deactivate. Oh, forgot to do it with the add tool. Let me add this on there now. Boppity bip. Track. I'll see again. I never listen to myself. Don't put it all the way out there. It'll work better if it's just here. And move it out. Let me also set this to 30. And I don't think I need shear. Blobbity bloop. That's tracking pretty well. Oh, lost it entirely there for some reason. Let's see. There we go. And then I know it's going to start coming in this way. Let's see if I can anticipate it that way. It's scaling up. Is that? No, it's just a big move. Let's untick scale and rotation just for this part here. There we go. That looks better. And then, yeah, let's just do it all the way. Now let's see what happens. Now, I feel like this maybe is the next important part, is where I put select on spline, activate. Oh, I forgot to just do it that way for some reason. Is where I put the surface area tool. Where I put this. Let's just try it on the first frame. It's fast, so I can do it a bunch of different ways. Let's try it here. This isn't gonna work. And I blame you guys for letting me try this. Reverse. Corner pin. Apply. Let's see what it does. Come on. I think this might work. Okay, okay. So let's pre-comp it. Invert it. You guys, I think it works. Six minutes. Well, 1 minute over, and I think it worked. I've changed the game. I have to go do shots. Excuse me. This changes things. Okay. I've never spent the time to even try this out, and it works. That's fascinating. So then I guess all I'd have to do in my render comp is make sure let's see, where's my anchor point thing? Why did it take me back here? If I apply it to the bottom, I'm not actually quite sure where this should be. Something. Where's my render comp at? Something's weird about this. What am I not thinking about? My mind's blown because that thing worked, so I don't even... let me see. Oh, I did it on the first frame. What? What am I looking at? Why is this? Oh, I see. I'm stupid. Is it this? No, that's fine. Let's maybe I just reset this to be the correct thing instead of the other one. I think that's what it is. No, that's not what it is. Well, what am I looking at? Oh, because I'm really, really stupid. Okay, I see. No? I think what's happened here is I've lost my marbles. What have I done? Something odd is happening. I pre-comp something wrong. This is why I should probably name stuff a lot better during tutorials. Because I see what's happening. The actual footage layer is gone somewhere. That's fine. I'll come back in here and place this back in. Oh, was it not at 1080? Oh, I cropped it. Why did I crop it? That solves it. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Stupid Doom Patrol preset, that's what I did when I was setting up the comp. Way back when. So, okay. So now what am I looking at? This is wrong here? Right? So this should be restabilize. Got it. So maybe... Well, it's good to know that thing worked. I just gotta do it more organized. But let me line this back up with itself. I do this constantly. I think someone asked last time what this was and why I was doing it. And I use the difference blending mode to line things up all the time. Super useful. Basically what I'm looking for, and I'll crank up the exposure, is for it to go back to completely black. There's also a neat way of checking your work using difference mode, and seeing how much you've replaced and how your grain compares to the actual grain. That I learned from Ryan. So that's interesting. Wow, very cool. Okay, so let's come in here and find some textures that I can just throw on here quickly. Open these. Let's throw in something gross, I think. Or should we do veins? Let's do both. Throw that in my elements folder, which is probably full of stuff. So one of the things I could do too, because I have the ground here, is go back in here and go to Video Copilot and get a shockwave surface. Let's see. I don't think any of these are straight or like flat on the side. And just see what this looks like. Maybe use vibrance too to unmultiply it. What? Fine, for the sake of time, I'm gonna throw this on screen. Well, that's interesting. Obviously, because it's doing a 3D move, I'd have to like move this down to be on the ground. But let's throw like a vein texture on here. Let's throw multiple. So I'll do something like this where I'll do something like this and then set it to, what am I thinking? I need to invert this one actually. And then what I would do is, well, actually I can invert the final thing and just set this to multiply. Maybe do something like this. Again, this is going to be super janky, but let's see. I should be able to just, I mean, I don't know. No, something about this looks like it's not going to work, huh? Like it's, and I think maybe it's just an issue with the way I tracked it super lazy, but we'll see. I think these are going to slide around his arm. But it's interesting. There's definitely a way to make this work. I'll play with this and perfect it. So I've got this now. So what I do is maybe make a solid white. Put that underneath. Pre-comp this. Veins pre-comp. Spelled pre-comp completely wrong. And then maybe do, copy this, set this to a guide layer, and then let's, I think I have an animation preset for veins. Nope. I do, it's just buried in there. Blobalize sometimes works well. Set it to the veins. Lightness or luminance, don't think it matters. And then turn this down. Oh, I was gonna invert it. Which, I wonder where it's, I think it's better to do it at the top. Let's do it from here. And set this to effects and mass. Let's see here. Turn the softness down. And then let's move. No, I should turn the softness up, right? Oops. Turn this down. Or turn this one up. Yeah, turn this one up. Yeah, it's gonna slide around his arm, isn't it? And then just sort of roughly mask this around here. And again, I can do that thing I did before. Just play forward. Yeah. See, if it was really locked on there, this would have lined up perfectly with it. So I guess it won't work perfectly, but it will be close. It'll be close-ish. This is a terrible way to do this effect, but we're doing it live. Let's see. Feather it, go back here. Interesting. Yeah, let's see what happens. And I don't need motion blur. Let's see. I mean, look. For the part that I tracked well, didn't try and do a really quick, dirty track on the rest of that arm. In fact, I could probably use the track from the other one, but, you know, I changed the comp, so it's a little screwy. But I don't have to try and combine two different tracks like I would have. Yeah. Steve, it's fine. I doubted myself. So yeah, it slides a little bit. Could fix that with a better track that wasn't done so quickly. But wow. Very interesting. So basically all you have to do is and I guess the way I would do this, let me find let me just like do it real fast with the same thing, is sort of watch your footage. If there's like a big, you know, there's big motion like this one where it's a big pan, and basically adjust the comp size by going in here too to advanced and picking the anchor point, and sort of finding the source of the motion, and then adjusting it as you go. Could even, I basically guessed, I just added like 2000 and then set the height a bunch. And again, you got to reset this every time you do it. But so yeah, you could make an oversized comp like this and then just keep making it bigger. I imagine that may slow things down. After Effects may start processing things differently because of your comp size. But you can definitely do that to track something that you know you're going to do like reverse stabilized comp on and have that workspace to work in. It totally works. I'm so mad I've never tried this before. Ugh. You guys, I'm so glad I found this. That's interesting. I guess another quick way to see how it's working is we could just throw a checkerboard pattern in here on the layer and see what it's looking like. Like that, maybe. But that is super interesting. The more you know. Go back in here. Did I not close my mask? Oh, does this not respect it? Stencil alpha. There we go. Respect it. Yeah, that totally works. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, so I guess, so there's two things. You got to remember to, so first you would extend your comp to about where it would probably be, and you could even do it after the fact like I did. But then the other thing you'd want to remember is to, once you've done your track and everything and you're like, you know, you're good with that, set your comp back down to the regular size afterwards. But just for the sake of tracking, I guess you could even scale it up separately and export that as an image so you can, even image sequence or something, and track that and not have to, like, you know, bounce back and forth between aspect ratios in here. But wow, we did it, you guys. No thanks to Steve. um, yeah, this is sort of interesting since I'm on here. Let me see. Blibbity blobbity bloop. Let me reset everything. And let's go into Titans real quick, because I got a shot I think would be interesting. FTG. Where's my backup? It's a different folder, isn't it? Let's go to the finals. That might be FTG. Anyone have any questions or anything they want me to try? We got 20 minutes before I'm done. So the way I'm sort of like structuring these is that these are not the tutorials I plan on like putting on my channel. Like I'll put this up there. This will be here afterwards. But the idea is that I go in here and I show these types of things, and then like I can talk to you guys, and even just trying stuff out in real time, and figure out the different complications and like questions that you might have, instead of getting those after the tutorial is made. Because I always feel like that happens. Like I'm watching a tutorial and there's interesting stuff they're sort of going about or doing. But then like I immediately have questions about, well, I know what if you do this? This isn't going to work. You're going to lose it doing this or that or whatever. So that's sort of the idea I had with doing live streams before I really record the more formal tutorial, the instructional thing, is to get that stuff worked out ahead of time. 110, is it this? No, these were interesting too though. Is it 101? That's interesting. Yeah, I will say that the thing I did reverse stabilized pre-comps on the most were Raven's eyes and Titans. I came up with that whole like vein thing that she has under her eyes. So let me find something that's a little more exaggerated. So that like something like that might be annoying. She turns and moves. So let's just isolate that. And I'm not going to name any of this properly. Sorry, but I'll degrain it very quickly. Yeah, I'm definitely going to organize and label stuff later. And put this out there. Eyes are my favorite. Eyes are my favorite effect to do, and I think because of that, I do them the best. Let me find my meme here. This is me basically. This is the embodiment of me. I design your eyes. So it's been the degrained. It's taking time to get, yeah. Exactly. But definitely doing, and this has sort of come in handy lately. This new tool Mocha has, this edge detect thing, not necessarily for doing fine roto all the time, But I mean, look at that. This is sort of like out of focus, and it's pulling up the edge pretty good. Um, and that's useful for doing like a matte where I know I need to have it ignore this, because I just sort of want to track a flat plane. So I could do that. I could call it La Nose. And maybe soften those edges a bit. Set this to 30, shear, perspective, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that looks fine. So normally when I do eyes, you can get away with tracking a few different areas in the eyes I've found work best. You can never really do the eyebrows or doing like too far into the cheeks because of like you know, so there's like slight parallax, especially when you're closer to someone's face. That Mocha's really good, so it'll pick up on that, and you don't exactly want it. So what I will sometimes do is I'll literally make like shades in a way where I'll do like this, and I'll like do something like this, and then make sure that's underneath the nose, and then add in two masks around here, because it sort of depends. You got to watch your footage and see what's happening. If they're blinking, then you really don't want to track their eyelashes, because that'll throw it off. And their eyelids, you know, they move around a lot. But sometimes you can avoid having to do this extra step of doing this this sort of like bigger eye mask thing. But yeah, I'll do it like this, where I create some shades, some little 3D glasses, and then see how much of that you can get away with, because I sort of want it to be a flat plane, knowing how I'm going to work with this footage as a corner pin. That works a lot better. But in some scenarios, you may be better off tracking each eye independently, like each plane of where the eye is. But generally, I would do something like this for doing something specific to the eyes. Yeah, Mocha is the best for doing this type of thing, because it's not tracking points, it's tracking texture, which is also good to keep in mind. So let's see, let me let it keep going. And I can see right now there's an issue I'm gonna have, which is I'm letting it's a little bit too high over here. So I would probably roll it back and lower this down just to be safe, and this side as well, maybe even curve that in, because I'm starting to get places where it's less flat. So like I'm trying to get something that, in all honesty, is a little bit more floaty than maybe you want. But in terms of trying to work fast, this will, in a reverse stabilized comp, it'll work really well. But yeah, you know, it's all sort of a decision you make between, do I want to spend more time tracking, or do I want to spend more time getting the look? A lot of the time that I spend on the work I do is not the technical stuff. I've had to find ways to, like this, like to work around that, so I can get to the look dev part of things a lot quicker. That's what's most important. And then another thing you want to remember in general, this doesn't really come up with like the last shot I did, but when you're doing reverse stabilized comps, I can't believe I'm saying this at the end. The thing you want, other than to have, you know, the object or the area that you're working with in frame not being cut off, even though we just fixed that, you want it to be looking as parallel to camera as possible. The whole idea is that you're gonna hit this button, and it'll lock the surface area to your plane, or to your footage, and that's going to be the plane. And so knowing that, like this, I'm looking at her turn. This is about as close as she gets to looking towards camera, you know. So I want that. I want to be working from here because the corner pin is going to squash and stretch stuff with the shear tracking data anyway. So I want to make sure that it's somewhere like that where I know I'm going to have something that's not going to look funky. Because if I start working from somewhere like here and say I do like an eye effect like this, like on here, when it goes later into the frame and it stretches it out, it'll lose quality. It'll look weird. So you want to make sure you're working from a place in the shot where the subject matter that you're working with is most parallel to camera as possible. You don't want to start from an angle, if at all possible. So again, let's see. I spent a little more time on that than I wanted to, but fast. Layer 3, blur, play the footage, apply, pre-comp. Oh, I didn't name anything. Reorganize SGB, invert, put the noise back on, and just for fun, I don't know if I still have it loaded. I do. I'm gonna put the LUT on there so I can see. This is K-Bar. This is a plugin on aescripts.com. Super useful. You can put all sorts of like plugins or scripts or even expressions, whatever you want on there, and then assign them like different buttons, and then you can adjust the settings and whatnot. And you can also export them and import them as groups. And you can also do multiple bars. I could have a bar here, I could add one here, but I like to have as much space designated to this as possible. I just realized it says display acceleration disabled. What is that about? Don't know. So let's go in here. I guess I should save this, huh? I don't know if I can give you guys this footage, but we'll see. So, as you can see, again, doing an eye effect on here going to be a lot easier than trying to work with something that's moving around. And then this isn't going to be perfect. It may not even be good looking. But let's find... That is not it. Doom Mansion. What is the thing I want? I want like star. Let me just, no, I don't want to search eyes because I'll get a million things. Raven effect. Let me think. Whatever, it's fine. We'll do something simple. Let's just make, or you know what? Yeah, let's make her eyes black. So I will sample this. And then one of the first things I do, obviously, is pre-comp that footage so I don't mess with that. And then without having to do a bunch of super fine roto in here, because again, I'm just doing this super dirty. Let's do like that. Something like that. And then, so now you can see like there's a really useful thing to do to work in like this for roto, because I can sort of see where things need to be adjusted a lot easier. Which is interesting because it's sort of harder to do this inside of Mocha. Like there that stabilize button is there and whatnot, but trying to roto doesn't actually work like that. Like it'll stabilize it around the track that you have selected, but you can't go and start another layer of roto and it still be stabilized around that other layer's tracking data. It'll just keep stabilizing it with whatever's selected. So yeah, I feel like there's got to be a way for it not to do that, but it must be something totally different because I've never really done that. Did I stop tracking it at the end? I did. I didn't track it all the way. That's fine. And then say I wanted to make her eye real quick. This will be the cutout where I cut out her pupil. Set a mask. Maybe move this mask here. Boop, boop, boop. Stretch it this way. Super, super quick and dirty. Not at all how I would do this, but close. Let's see. I'm just going to go in between. Maybe copy this frame back here and stretch it vertically. Ah, that makes sense. So Steve was saying basically like when he makes, I think I'm understanding you right. I think you're saying when you would make new shapes, you would parent them to that one that you wanted stabilized around. So then when you're rotoing, you would see it. But then, what if you want to track with that layer? I guess that's defeating the purpose, huh? Ah, that makes sense. Steve, come back to LA and help. Steve, come back. We'll start a GoFundMe. Super, super sloppy. Too much white right here. So let's see what this looks like, because I don't want to spend all day on this. Blur that some, blur that some, maybe blur that some more. Maybe let this fade into the iris a bit more. And, oh yeah, I do that. And that is how I would make her eyes black. I like to keep the iris. It's an interesting look. Don't always do it, but I always will do something else. Which you can't really see too much of here. Maybe there is on a different part of the shot. No. But usually, like you see here, there's like this little highlight that's catching it, and down here, whenever possible, I will make sure that I try and keep that stuff in there, even if it's just as simple as, you know, picking similar color, and like I'll throw that back in there. And I'll animate it to make sure it matches the actual plate. But if there's any like highlights, basically, the idea is if there's highlights you're going over with this effect, I would throw that stuff back in there because that's what's gonna make it look wet. So, and then sometimes you can even just like fake them, if there isn't any. But that's not, you know. The idea is to keep whatever sort of inconsistencies are there in the first place, I try and either replicate or just keep in there on purpose. Let's see what happens if I leave that there. You know, sort of interesting. You can see my dot. That one's a little too faded. That, just ignore that. But Eric, come to LA. Come on, what's happening? But yeah, that's how I do her black eye. What did I lose the? Oh, I didn't keep rotoring this way. That's because I'm stupid. There we go. Probably more. What's that? Oh, she's just still. Got it. That's how I do that. Works super well. And I Oh. Yeah. I'm about done here, you guys. That last thing we did really blew my mind. I gotta play with that. But yeah, that's what that looks like. And like something like this, with eyes, I definitely would just, I wouldn't, not something I need to bother trying to recreate the noise with. But doing that degrain regrain, especially helpful on this because it'll just throw it right back in there. My eye. Yeah. So let me go back here. So this is saved. Yes, so this was basically everything I wanted to go over. If you guys have like more questions about this stuff, please tell me. Before I do anything like the final tutorial. I want to make sure like I don't spend a bunch of time on it. Basically, my idea for the tutorial is I want to show you how to do some stuff I spent months on. And this may be like a thing I do over time, like maybe like a 3-part. Let's put the credits in there. Hey, look, it's Ryan. Is I have a little prop, and I have an idea of how I'm gonna film it, but tracking stuff like this, where this is all glass or plastic or whatever, and there's nothing really there. Like, you can see right through all these screens, which, as you can imagine, is an incredible challenge, and stuff like this. And I don't know, I couldn't give even a guesstimate sort of percentage on how much, but you'd be surprised how many of these aren't actually like manually corner pinned. There are ways to track this type of stuff that is otherwise seemingly impossible. Especially I guess I don't have it in here, but like oh, you know what? I know where it is. Elliot 2 real. Let's see what pops up. Stuff like this, where it's like handheld and it's shaky and there's reflections naturally, and you're trying to like keep that. I also had to do like some beauty fix stuff here to like fix these seams that were just sort of like electrical tape on the sides. But stuff like this is pretty interesting. How much you can actually track, knowing different ways you can manipulate the footage, whether it be like high pass filters like I keep mentioning. This was definitely one of them, to try and pull out stuff like fingerprints or scratches, just anything you can grab in the footage. And actually the same with this stuff too. This natural specularity that the glass is picking up from light outside. How you would track that. Super fine detail like that. But yeah, especially like this. So yeah, the idea I had is I've got a little thing I'm shooting right now with something sort of like this, which looks like something that would be impossible to track, but it's pretty easy. So yeah. Any more questions, class? Thank you. Yes, I like my UIs. I've spent a bunch of time making that type of stuff for a lot of things. I've got some in Titans that I did. I've got some that are gonna be out for you to see in a video game this year called In the Black that I've mentioned before, which is sort of interesting. I have a whole thing I have planned for UIs and stuff like that, because that's an interesting challenge, designing stuff for a video game coming from like a film and television background. because that stuff is all made to look nice in like movies and TV. But then once you get into a game and you start trying to do that, it's like, oh, no one wants to use this. This is a terrible user experience. So there's like, sorry, there's a crossover between that from user interface to user experience. Very different. Um, and definitely not necessarily my area of expertise, the experience part. Um, but that's sort of the way I was able to do that is because I play a bunch of games, and so just already have a sense of what is annoying to work with or not. Like I know what I would fix in games, so it was sort of interesting in that regard. It's like, oh, this is my chance to fix some things that other games do wrong that I know could be done better if you just like spend some time figuring it out and experiencing it different ways. So yeah, I will see about organizing my project files for these two shots. And I'll have to look back for the other ones if there's something specific you guys want. Other than the Titans thing, I'll do that. Maybe I'll put that one of my brother's hand up there for people to help me find the best way to make this extended, oversized comp. It worked, you guys. That's awesome. But yes, anything else I want to say before I hop off of here? There's a Twitter, there's an Instagram, there's a website that I'm working on, escapefrompost.com, and the handles for everything is Escape from Post. And I have a bunch of stuff planned. I'm gonna be done with work soon, so this is gonna be like, who knows when this virus thing is gonna be over. I really think it's gonna be a while until I go back to working on anything. Who knows when productions will start up again? So I'm gonna throw myself into this. This is gonna be something I do constantly. I'm really gonna work at this, and I'm excited. And want any feedback you guys have, anything you guys want to do. If you guys have stuff you want to show off that you learned, let me know. Even if you think it's something, if you know me personally and you think I might know it already, I might not. I don't know much, obviously. I know enough, but share it with me, so we can share it with other people. And yeah, that's about it. Let me do my thing where I play it off to my cool intro. Ready? You guys ready for this? You guys ready for this? You're not ready for this. Let's go. No, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm not doing it. I took it all back. It's sweet. So yeah, thank you to everyone showing up tonight. Sorry I couldn't do it earlier. I had work stuff come up, obviously. Um, yeah, it was all ready and all that. I don't know why when I showed it, it just like showed it full screen, which is stupid. Not sure why I did that. Um, Here, I'll play it here. Maybe I'll break this down next time. That was pretty cool. Come on. I made that music too. We'll talk about it next time.